Today I'm going to discuss how we can connect to a Postgres database which is running inside of a Docker container using Java. Now the Postgres database do not need to be running inside of a Docker container. It can be installed somewhere in a server or in local PC. I am using a Docker container because it's very easy to install it inside of a Docker container. So here I have a Docker container image of Postgres which is running, and I did a Docker exec to get inside of the container, and then here I can run a query to show that in the database, which is my database, I have a table called users, and the user currently have a single row. So if I run the query, you can see the user has a single row with the ID 1, name John Doe, and address 123 Pine Street. And we will try to connect to this database using the same query and try to retrieve these values from a Java application. So to do that, there are a couple of things we need to do. First of all, we need to create a connection, and then using the connection, we will be connecting to the database and execute a query into the database. And after the query is executed, we will loop through the record that we got from the database and we'll try to extract the values. To do that, the other thing that we have to do also is that we need to use the PostgreSQL driver for Java. For downloading the PostgreSQL driver, I have just used the jdbc.postgresql.org, and I have used the download, and I downloaded the Java 8 version of the driver, which is Java 8 and above. And after downloading this, I created a lib folder inside of the folder where I'm working and pasted this particular jar file, because we are going to load this jar file as this is needed for us to connect to the database. This jar file provides all the essential mechanism for the Java code to connect to a Postgres database. So first what we are going to do is we are going to load this particular driver. So for that we can use class dot for name, and for the name we can give the Postgres database driver that we downloaded, which is org.postgresql.driver. That is what we are going to do first. So this particular method throws an exception, class not found exception, which means this method needs to be within a try catch block. So we can do like this, and we can catch the exception, and that's about it. We'll not do anything with the exception right now. Now, if you are not aware of try catch block is a way to handle any exception that might arise in a particular code. So once we do that, the next thing what we need to do is, for connecting to the Postgres database, we would need the URL of the database, the username, and the password. So for URL, we're going to say string URL is equal to, and the URL for the database is essentially going to the my database. So it is jdbc colon PostgreSQL and then localhost 5432. This is the port where it is running, and the database name is my database. And then I would need the username, and for the user I'm using SA. And finally, I need the password. And for the password, I'm just using plain and simple password as the password text. We should never use password as password text, but I'm just using it for simplicity. Now the next thing what we are going to do is we are going to create a connection object. So for that we can say connection is equal to driver manager dot get connection, and we're going to pass the URL as URL, user name as user, and password as the password. We already set all these three up above, so we're going to just use that. Now once I added the connection, what Visual Studio Code did is it automatically added the import statement for java.sql.connection and java.sql.driver manager. After the connection is created, we are going to create a statement object. So for that, we're going to use statement, which is part of the java.sql namespace statement. And we are going to create the statement using the create statement method of connection. And statement is something which is needed for executing queries into the database. So we'll say connection dot create statement. That's what we are going to use. And once the statement is created, we can use the statement to execute query. When we execute query, it returns a result set. So what we can do here is we can say result set rs is equal to execute query, and here we're going to use the same query that we used in the command prompt here, which is select start from public dot users. So I can just paste this here, select start from public dot users. Now we got the result. After we got the result, what we have to do is we have to loop through the result set and find out the next record and try to print it out. So what we can do here is we can do while, and here we can do rs dot next. This is going to give us the next record, and then here we can extract the values using the result set again. So our first thing was id, which is an integer. We can say id is equal to rs dot get int, and the column index here is going to be 0, or we can actually use the name of the column, which is id. In our case, if you remember, it is id, name, and address. So we can just, instead of using the index, or we could use the index of 0, 1, and 2, or we can give the column name. I prefer column name because it is much more clearer what we are trying to access. Second thing is string name is equal to rs dot get string, and here I'm going to say name. And finally, string address is equal to rs dot get string address. Now we got the three values. After that, all I'm going to do is I'm going to use system dot out dot println, and I'm going to print out the value. So for printing out, I can do something like this, but instead of this, I can do id colon plus id plus name colon plus name, and then finally address colon address. That's about it. And then after we execute this, we would need to close the record set, the statement, and the connection. So here we can do record set dot close. We need to close it fast because this was the last item. Then we'll go one step up, which is the statement dot close. Finally, we'll close the connection. Now, ideally, we want to close connection irrespective of if everything was successful or not, if the connection is open. So the best practice here is to go to here and create the finally inside of a try catch finally block, and here checking if connection is not equal to null, then try to close it. Now right now the connection is inside of the try block, so we can get it out of the try block and we can declare the connection outside as null. So now we'll check if connection is not null, then go and close the connection. Connection.close can throw a SQL exception, which means we need to also put this connection close within a try catch block. And here we can just catch the SQL exception itself. And we can say SQL EXC. And that's about it. Now for both the exception, right now, at least for this example, we can just do system dot out dot println of the exception here, and in this case it's going to be the SQL exception. And that is pretty much it. Now if we go ahead and run this application, we should see the expected output. So now that the class is ready, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a breakpoint here and I'll try to debug this program. Now using Visual Studio, it is very easy to debug Java program. Just have to click on debug and you can see it came here, and we can use these or the F10 and F11 to step into or step over to the next line. So I'm just going to go ahead here. The connection is created. Now we can create a statement, execute the query, and now the result set is populated. So we're just going to do next, and you can see here it is coming inside. You can see the ID is 1, the name is populated with John Doe, and then address is populated with 123 Pine Street. And if we do the println, you can see here ID is 1, name is John Doe, and address is 123 Pine Street. It'll go back to do the next and there is nothing, so it'll come out. Close the record set, close the statement, and close the connection. I am closing the connection twice, so I should have just closed it once. I close it here as well as here again. That's about it. And as you can see, it is fairly simple and easy to connect to a Postgres database and select data. But this is not a very elegant way of connecting to database because we had to do a lot of coding ourselves, whereas there are packages available in Java which can provide these functionalities out of box, and it's much more easier to do it. But I'm going to cover those in future videos. That is all I wanted to cover for today's video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to this channel and you think you are getting value out of this channel, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks so much for watching this video.